Time for the big position here. College fantasy football wide receiver rankings. My name is Matt Hicks, the FF educator, joined as always by John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. And we're going to be doing our top 24 college fantasy football wide receivers, building on the running back and quarterback episodes that we have already put out. And, building off a little bit on our Underdog Live Draft CFF video as well here as we prepare for the rapidly approaching 2024 college football season. John, before we dig into the top 24, start us off here with an overview. Where do you see this wide receiver group this year overall in terms of strength, but also relative to the other positions we've covered?
I think it's stronger than people are giving it credit for. And you have to be comfortable and learn the player pool to find value in the middle rounds of the drafts. Yes, at the top of the board, which we'll talk about tonight, there are some great players who are college fantasy football difference makers. But once you get outside the top 20, Matt, from 20 to 50, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 All-Americans. And our job is to help people sift through all those names and help you grab those players. It is always a volatile position, folks. Over my 15-year career, there's the greatest fluctuation among preseason rankings and end-of-year rankings than at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, absolutely. If we don't talk about a wide receiver that you are all in on, feel free if you're watching on YouTube to drop us a comment, ask us about that player. As John mentioned, there's going to be players outside of the 24 we talk about that will end up, top 12 wide receivers. Like it's just the volatility, the variability of the position. And it's okay to lean into that and to understand that when you're heading into your CFF drafts this year. Before we jump into that top 24, we are rapidly approaching the CFF Kings Classic, which we will be live streaming. It's with some of the best college fantasy football analysts from around the country, as well as myself. And we will be doing, once again, a live draft from Canton, Ohio. Part of that is to get the best in the industry into a league, chop it up, duke it out for that title. But a big part of that league as well is supporting St. Jude Children's Hospital, helping raise funds to support that very worthy cause here. So we've gone ahead, we put up the slide here on how you can support St. Jude's. But John, I'll give you a moment here to just talk about, why you've highlighted this charity for to be attached to the CFF Kings Classic.
This is the third year we are raising funds for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. All of Matt and my videos that we record, including Debbie and the rookies, are free on YouTube. All of my written analysis for college fantasy football is available for free on Fantrax. Obviously, we hope to get you to join our hobby and play on Fantrax. But we do this for all of the CFF fans out there and all the potential ones. What we wanted to do was be able to have a component of our league at the expo in which we're helping other people. 3 years ago, we voted on the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, and so far we have collected over $2,900 in funds the first 2 years, and we're up to $900 this year. So please hit the link below, and any amount will help children and families. And we are 10 days away from the Kings Classic, so check out our video. Matt and I will be broadcasting live. I'm going to be there, and we're broadcasting the draft, and we're going to have all the guests on this year to talk about their draft.
Yeah, one of our most popular shows of the year for sure. Whether you're listening or watching, the link to donate and support will be in the episode description. We appreciate everybody who has done so already. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get into it here. Our top 24 wide receivers, starting with Malachi Fields out of Virginia at 24. John, talk to us about where you see Fields kind of stepping in. Are we expecting him to have take up that vacated volume coming from Malik Washington heading off to the Miami Dolphins?
Oh, yeah, Matt. And they didn't have a lot of turnover. Offensive coordinator Robert Anai is still there. We love Malik Washington as a deep sleeper. The Miami Dolphins drafted him on the third day. and Malachi Fields steps into that position. Now, they're very different players.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, Matt and I were discussing Washington is a quick twitch athlete, slot receiver, a little undersized. Not small, just more short with shorter arms. Malachi Fields is completely opposite, Matt. 6'4", 220 pounds, but the targets will be there. And I have been getting a lot of Malachi Fields in CFF best ball leagues.
Let's get into a deep dive here on Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver out of Iowa State. Now we've talked about Iowa State. We especially talked about that offense when we were on the fly drafting in our underdog CFF draft. And so, Rocco Beck stepping in, expecting a step forward there from Beck this year. And Higgins is the guy you're identifying as that key wide receiver in the Cyclones offense.
There's clearly a prototypical receiver that Matt Campbell and the Cyclones like. Remember Hakeem Butler, big, strong. Alan Lazard, big and strong. And guess what Jaden Higgins is, Matt?
Big and strong?
He's big and strong, 6'4", 210 pounds. He is exactly like this stereotype. They know what they're looking for, the Cyclones coaching staff. They find these players. He's from the FCS level at Eastern Kentucky. And in his first year on campus, he had 53 receptions for 983 yards, Matt. He was very good. I'm very comfortable with him as my first or second receiver. Prefer him as my second receiver. I think Higgins exceeds 1,000 yards receiving this year, and hopefully he gets into the end zone a few more times.
All right, coming in here at number 22 is Jeremy Bernard, Alabama. This is an interesting one. I think this is a real boom bust selection, right? I think we're expecting, Bernard transferred over from Washington with Kalen DeBoer. We don't know who the wide receiver one in this offense is. We don't know exactly what Jalen Milroe looks like in this offense, right? But what we saw Kalen DeBoer do well was hide a lot of flaws, scheme up for his quarterback, get wide receivers open. And the anticipation here is that you believe Bernard will be the top guy in terms of volume in the Alabama offense.
Absolutely. And Matt, you're right. It's going to be a boom or bust. I don't actually think there's no middle ground. Like, I don't think he goes out and has like 55 catches for 700 yards. I really believe that he's going to have like the 70 catches for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. Or he's just going to be on the bench and just be completely worthless. But I am banking on the upside here. I believe in Kalen DeBoer. He was at Washington, Bernard, last year, followed him to Alabama. And Matt, we're not going to talk about any other Alabama receivers. We've done Debbie profiles, and there's no Alabama receivers. Jalen Milroe, we like him. He is a dual threat quarterback. But someone's got to catch the ball in this Kalen DeBoer offense. So I think it's Bernard. I like him. I'll take the risk.
All right. And then for 2019 here, we have a lot of veteran experience and some proven production here. So at 21, we have Jamal Pritchett of South Alabama. 20 is Brendan Presley out of Oklahoma State. In 19 is Will Pauling out of Wisconsin. I want to especially talk about Brandon Presley. I feel like he was flying real under the radar there. Oklahoma State offense was a carousel at the quarterback position early on last season. And, I think it really found its rhythm late season. And I think Presley was a big part of that offense really kind of clicking and putting everything together on top of just the running game, which obviously for good reason gets a lot of the attention.
Matt, we know that Gundy is going to be very proficient in the passing game. Look at some of these great wide receivers: Dez Bryant, Justin Blackmon, James Washington, Tylan Wallace were CFF stars. And last year, Brendan Presley, he had over 100 receptions in this offense. He is a very good player. In PPR, he is simply gold. If I don't get Ollie Gordon, and you have to get Gordon in one of the top 3 picks. So if you don't have a top 3 picks, you're not getting Ollie Gordon. I am very comfortable taking Brennan Presley because I do just think the targets and the upside is there for the Cowboys wide receiver.
Absolutely. Moving on here to number 18, we have Mbuka out of Ohio State, the Ohio State. I think Mbuka, man, is just going to absolutely eat. If we're talking in terms of volume, working underneath, I think he's going to have a high target share. He's going to have a high catch percentage. The question for me is touchdowns. That's what's interesting, because I do think you're going to have Jeremiah Smith on the outside, and I do think you're going to have Carnell Tate. Ohio State rotates in that fourth wide receiver, depending on the competition, sometimes that fifth wide receiver. But nonetheless, he's a super talented guy, and I think he comes with a lot of floor. Is that how you're reading the situation?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think his ceiling is a little bit capped, Matt. And I think he has a really nice floor. Like if you told me right now he's going to have 900 yards receiving and he's going to have 7 touchdowns, I think that's very reasonable.
That's probably, yeah.
And I had to move him down the board when I did projections. And we didn't even talk about my biggest concern. They have 3 studs who can run the football in. Will Howard at quarterback, Trevion Henderson at running back, and Quinshon Judkins at running back. So I just wonder how many touchdowns and how many touches is this great player going to get.
Coming in number 17 is Xavier Restrepo from Miami. John, I just finished and posted on the Rookie Big Board resource page for all the Rookie Big Board patrons my quarterback preseason scouting preview. I did summer scouting on 9 different quarterbacks, and Cam Ward was one of them. He'll be throwing the ball to Xavier Restrepo, and I got to tell you, man, he's got a big arm to be catching the ball from. I know Miami likes to run it, but I think Restrepo and Ward are going to be potentially one of the best, if not the best, quarterback wide receiver combo in the ACC this year.
I was very slow coming around to Restrepo as a college fantasy football asset. It just Miami a little bit concerns me with their coaching staff. But Matt, I did watch more film of him and I plugged in some numbers. And then I was like, they got an upgrade at the quarterback position. He's really good. Like, I really wanted to move him even higher, but I just have reservations about that coaching staff. And will they put the pedal to the metal in the second half of games, which I wonder.
Now we're going to go from the ACC to the AAC and talk about Rock Taylor out of Memphis. We talk about all the time. These previews are great because you get to dig into some G5 guys that you may not get as much exposure to if you're just playing more on the Devy level or even the Dynasty level. But Rock Taylor out of Memphis, John, that's a player worth digging in a little bit more on here.
I really like Rock Taylor. He has an ADP currently of around 50, so you can get him in the 5th round, Matt. I've seen him slip into the 6th round. You're talking about a young man with 69 catches for over 1,000 yards. Now, the touchdowns were limited. He only had 4 last year. Matt, we all know touchdowns are fickle. He plays with Seth Hennigan, who has been one of the best touchdown throwers over the last 3 years in college football. If you give Rock Taylor a little bump to 8 or 9 touchdowns with the possibility of double digits, he has a smash season ahead. I think if he goes out and produces another 1,000 yards, he's going to get discussed in the draft process. I think people are going to unearth him. He's a very good college fantasy football wide receiver.
Obligatory ranking here at number 15 for Trey Harris, John's guy, coming out of Ole Miss, and certainly, identifying a wide receiver in the Lane Kiffin offense is going to be a good call. You feel like Harris is the guy to target there, to zone in on.
Yeah, he's definitely the guy I want to target, and I love the value in the 4th round at his current ADP. Of course, there are other really nice pass catchers in Mississippi. However, I'm a believer that Jackson Dart is an outside Heisman winner. Lane Kiffin is going to put the pedal to the metal. Unlike Miami, Lane Kiffin is no problem putting 50 points on the board. Trey Harris is going to get his targets. Now, he might be a little up and down because there could be matchups and game plans where he doesn't get the double-digit targets, But when you put together the entire season, Trey Harris is going to be very good in college fantasy football.
Kevin Concepcion, 10 touchdowns in his first season for the Wolfpack. That's a large chunk of production coming from an offense that doesn't generally, not generally hyped up as like a top offense. But he'll be catching balls from Grayson McCall, who has short hair now. So I don't know. Maybe that will help make him a little bit aerodynamic throwing down the field. But Concepcion, certainly a player to target for high touchdown volume, where Eugene Wilson coming out of Florida here, somebody to target more so for those targets, the overall volume that he should see. He also, as a true freshman, really stuck out in a Florida offense that otherwise looked fairly vanilla.
I like both of these players right now at their current ADP. They're both sophomores. Concepcion got an upgrade with Grayson McCall at quarterback, so I do think he'll be more efficient in the passing game. And I have Eugene Wilson because it's game script, Matt. Florida is projected to be one of the bottom teams in the SEC. Let's be kind. Well, what does that tell me? That Graham Mertz and that Gators offense is going to throw a lot. So I expect a serious uptick in targets for Eugene Wilson at Florida.
All right. Before we get into our top 12, want to make sure folks know about the fantastic resources available over at patreon.com/rookie big board. I just mentioned it there. I have summer scouting preview articles on the rookie big board for quarterbacks, for running backs, for wide receivers. There's 30 scouting reports on the 2025 class already up there, as well as dynasty rankings, Devy rankings, our CFF underdog tournament rankings from John. A ton of great content, not to mention you can get personalized advice and build up some fun community here as we get ready for the 2024 season in our Discord. All of that and actually a lot more available over at patreon.com/rookie big board for just $5 a month. Now is the time. You want to get ahead of your league mates. You want to know about these guys early. You want to get a jump start on these rankings for your startup drafts, etc. Now is the time. And now's the time to get into our top 12 wide receiver rankings here, starting with Kyren Lacy out of LSU. Now, John, in my head, I want to hear your thoughts here, because in my head, Kyren Lacy, he kind of fits in that Jeremy Bernard category for me, where, man, this could smash, but oh boy, this could go wrong too.
Oh, there's no doubt that there's risk here. I agree with that, Matt, but maybe I'm just an optimist, but really, I'm a believer in Brian Kelly. And I maybe I'm a broken record, but if you look at this coach's track record, Michael Floyd, TJ Jones, Will Fuller, Equinemius St. Brown, Miles Boykin, Chase Claypool, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, they were all CFF studs. And the drum beat, Matt, the drum beat from Brian Kelly, if you listen to any of his news conferences, if you listen to the quote, like it's LSU, right? So there's tons of what chat rooms, I don't even know what they call them anymore, Reddit,
message boards.
There you go, message boards. Brian Kelly's all over Kyren Lacy. I'm going for the ceiling. I believe in the LSU offense. Could it go south? Yes. Is the wide receiver room crowded? Yeah, there's talent in there, but I'm going to believe that Kelly is being straight with us. I like Kyren Lacy a ton.
Yeah, I mean, you make a strong argument for Lacy there. Just as an alternative strategy, if you're kind of in on the LSU offense, which you probably should be, watch Garrett Nussmeier. I like what we've seen from Garrett Nussmeier, and limited film, but still, spring game. I think it was the ReliaQuest Bowl last year.
Yep.
He had some really good examples. One thing I'll be doing, I'm not going to go for Kyren Lacy high, but I will late in drafts. I'll be looking for some exposure to Chris Hilton. I'll be looking for some exposure to Aaron Anderson, just to give a different strategy here. If you like the offense and you're not sure about the top guys we're talking about, take some shots late on some of the other, starting wide receivers on an offense. That can definitely pay off for you in the long run as well. However, you shouldn't be looking for anybody else on the Stanford offense, especially in the wide receiver room, than Alec Ayaminor. Man, this guy's the real deal. Let's talk about big man production. I have a ton of exposure to him already in my C2C leagues, and I'm only going out and getting more, man, because I loved the summer scouting that I saw on him.
Matt, we're on the same page. And I do think people thought I was crazy, like in April, where I said I'm all in. And they were I got some weird comments and DMs on the Xbox, like, what are you talking about? I'm like, just watch the film. Like, look at the numbers, look at his high school track record. He was a track speedster. Matt, if he was at a different school, if he was at USC, people would be talking about him like crazy. I'm all in. I've got way too many shares. I just think he's going to be peppered with targets. They're moving into the ACC. I think the game script is going to be negative for them, so they're going to throw the ball a lot. When you give me a big wide receiver with home run ability and they're playing from behind, I'll take it all day, my friend.
All right, moving on here to Jalen Royals, Utah State at 10. And then we have Ashlock out of Hawaii at 9. John, Utah State, I know we're going through some potential coach change there, but between Utah State and Hawaii, these are just like steady year over year. Look for the wide receiver and plug them into the ranking offenses.
Oh, absolutely. And I did have Jalen Royals higher until, unfortunately, Blake Anderson ran into some Title IX trouble. He was originally put on leave. Now he has actually been released. So he's no longer the coach. So I had to move him down because there's just uncertainty this late in the process what the offense will look like. I still think he's going to be pretty good, Matt. I had him, I think it's number 5 before the coaching change. I just had to move him down. And Ashlock, what can I say? I mean, I was high on him before unfortunate news with Stephen McBride. We're not going to talk about that. You can research. It's a very unfortunate story. What has happened at Ohio with Stephen McBride? The reason I only mentioned it is that opens up a potential boatload of targets for Ashlock in this run and shoot offense. I think he was going to get 105, 110 targets before. He might get 130 targets now. I love Ashlock. This young man had 83 receptions last year, but he only had 832 yards. Matt, if they push him down the field more and give him some deep passes, he could easily exceed 1,000 yards receiving.
Coming in at 8 is Sean Atkins out of USF. We talked a lot about Byron Brown when we did our quarterback preview episode, and Atkins is going to be his top target here. Remember, this is the shoot and veer offense that you may have gotten familiar with 2 years ago at the University of Tennessee. Their offensive coordinator at the time is now the head coach at USF, Alex Golesh. So Sean Atkins should be in prime position to really tear it up against some less than intimidating defenses.
Yeah, we love the G5 because you get these types of players. And if you've noticed watching our shows, there are more G5 receivers available than there are running backs and quarterbacks. Part of it is if you have an elite skill, it might be speed, it might be size, it might be quickness. And then you combine that with system, Matt, we can get really good college fantasy football wide receivers, and that's Atkins. He's entering his 6th year on campus. He's one of the most prolific wide receivers in school history, and it's Golesh in that system. We loved Byron Brown last year. I had him on a lot of teams. He even exceeded what I thought, but Golesh is going to throw the football, and Atkins is the guy at USF. My only regret, it's very hard to stack Atkins with Brown because Atkins goes in the 1st or early 2nd round of drafts.
Absolutely. Coming in at number 7 is Tez Johnson, and we're going to talk about him in the same conversation as his teammate, Evan Stewart, who comes in at 6. We're talking about both of these guys, John, in a Dan Lanning offense, right? Now, it's going to be an elevated level of competition, right? Going to the Big Ten versus the playing in the Pac-12 the last all of Oregon's existence. But I think taking that step up, it's still not phasing you in terms of where you're going to rank these two guys. And what gives Stewart the slight nod over Johnson for you?
Basically, I'm a sizist. I'm going to go with the bigger player. The excuse me, coming out of high school, Stewart was the higher ranked prospect, the recruit. He's a bigger player. Johnson's 5'10", 160. He is Bo Nix's adopted brother, I'm sorry. He is an amazing, fast, quick player. But at that size, I do wonder what his touchdown equity is like. He might get that like 90 catches for 1,000 yards, but how many touchdowns is he going to have from Dylan Gabriel? Because he's not, why can't I remember the Houston wide receiver who's now on the Texans? Tank Dell. He's not as quick as Tank Dell. Tank Dell in the red zone when he was with the Houston Cougars and we saw it with the Houston Texans was amazing. So I don't think he's that talented, but man, Tez Johnson is really good.
At 5, we have Joey Hobart, Texas State. We talked about it, man. We love the Bobcats here for CFF. Hobart coming in with nearly 80 receptions, just shy of 900 receiving yards last year. I think a player who just comes with a ton of floor and the opportunity for even more volume heading into this season.
Oh, Hobart could be a massive home run. And I was stunned, Matt, when I was doing my homework on the research. He's the son of Billy Joe. I'm old enough. I watched Billy Joe Hobart play college football, and he was drafted. He played for the Raiders, Bills, Saints, and Colts in the NFL. I did not know this was his son. Now, he's had a long journey to production at Texas State. He actually had to take a step backwards at one point. He went to Utah Tech, which is an FCS program. And then he ended up back at the FBS level at Texas State. But last year, man, he was so good with 78 receptions for 895 yards and 8 touchdowns. And now with Jordan McLeod coming over from James Madison in G.J. Ginn's offense, Hobart should exceed 1,000 yards. He should touch that 90-catch ceiling that I believe. The touchdowns, we'll see how many he gets. But I really love Hobart this year for the Bobcats.
Yeah, and I really love Ricky White. Coming in at number 4 here, UNLV. Ricky White has been a steady player on my C2C, and I even had him, I believe, on 2 or 3 CFF rosters last year. Let's take a in-depth look here at Ricky White, the wide receiver out of UNLV.
First, he did start his career at Michigan State. He really didn't get a lot of playing time for the Spartans. And in 2022, he moved south into the desert for the UNLV Rebels. First year on campus, he didn't do too much, but there was a lot of discussion last spring about Ricky White and the Brennan Marion's go-go attack. And man, I had him on so many CFF teams last year, Matt, and he was incredible. He far exceeded anything that I expected. 88 catches for 1,483 yards. The only concerning part was the 8 touchdowns, but I do believe that UNLV has gotten an upgrade. They have a quarterback battle this summer, but both of them are better than what the Rebels had behind center. So White might be able to get into those double-digit touchdowns. And if you're a Devy person or C2C, Ricky White has some outside NFL potential. I have him in my Devy ranks. He's not in the top 12. And I think it's going to be very important what we see for his athletic scores. But Ricky White might get some buzz over next winter as we come close to the NFL draft.
Yeah, speaking of NFL potential, our top 3 all are on the radar here. Number 3, Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. Number 2, Luther Burden out of Mizzou. And number 1, Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. Let's start here with Torrey Horton, man. I mean, it's just like, just run it back. right? Like, let's don't overthink it. Torrey Horton, just super high floor. The production will be there. You're looking at 1,000 yards plus. You're looking at, 7, 8 touchdowns. You're looking at probably 100 receptions, right? It's just, what you're getting there with Torrey Horton.
Without question, Matt, he has had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving in Jay Norvell's passing game for Colorado State. He actually followed Norvell from Nevada to Colorado State, 6'2", 190. And as a CFF fan, I'm very happy that Norvell sat down with Horton's family and they discussed their NFL potential. And he convinced Horton, if he wants to be on day 2 of the draft, that's the second or third round, that it would benefit him to come back to campus, post prolific numbers, and get ready for the NFL draft. And he's going off the board. I've seen him first amongst wide receivers. I'm not willing to go there, but there are people who like him number 1 at receivers. But man, he's definitely off the board within the top 10 picks, usually the third receiver off the board.
All right. Well, our second wide receiver on the board is Luther Burden out of Mizzou. Really strong true freshman season 2 years ago, playing along the outside, but exploded in the Eli Drinkowitz offense, moving inside to the slot. We talked about Luther Burden heading into last season. We said that slot spot in the Eli Drinkowitz offense is what it's all about, and he absolutely tore it up. We talked about his quarterback, Brady Cook, in our quarterback preview episode. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry here. Burden is one of the most talented players in the country in one of the most wide receiver-friendly offenses in the country, playing in the best spot in that offense. We're looking at another really exciting year for Burden.
Oh, Matt, I want to send Eli Drinkowitz a thank you card because it was his freshman year. He was nice. I mean, if it wasn't for expectations, no one would be upset with 45 receptions, 375 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He also carried the ball 18 times for 88 yards. But he was the highest graded recruit to ever arrive on the Missouri campus. And by switching into the slot, Burden was unbelievable. And Matt, with Brady Cook as quarterback returning, there is absolutely no reason to believe that Burton won't be an All-American, first-team All-American once again. He is awesome in CFF, especially in PPR scoring formats, and he's off the board within the top 6 players. Of every draft that I've been in, and I think I've done 12 now, he's off the board within the top 6 picks all the time.
Now, if you want to take Luther Burden, first wide receiver off the board, not going to blame you. If you want to take Torrey Horton off the board, like John said, not going to blame you. But I'm with John here, man. McMillan's the first guy coming off the board for me. Over 1,400 yards last season. But for me, it's the touchdowns, right? So especially if you're playing in a 6-point touchdown league, or there's a bonus for multi-touchdown games. Now, he had 10 last year, which is great. But I think you could easily project 13 or 14 this year. Like running it back with Noah Fafita, he's got the chemistry. I think he's in a really good spot, man. And, Arizona also changed conferences here, but, they didn't go from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. They went from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, and it's only more open, right? It's the Big 12 we talk about this year after year, not known for tough secondaries, right? So McMillan, I think, could just look absolutely physically dominant against a lot of teams this year.
Oh, Matt, if he hits his ceiling, he could be really, really silly. Now, our only concern is he had a little bit of a foot injury. Mm-hmm. So I have not seen him really drop in drafts. I do think people who are taking Burton over T-Mac are still in that camp. T-Mac's off the board within the top 6 all the time. I think we're going to get decent. I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm no doctor, but I do think he should be back by training camp. We're still a pretty decent way away. I'm not moving T-Mac down my board yet, Matt. He's 6'5", 205 pounds. I just don't think there's very many defensive backs who can deal with this man on the outside. And I know both of us have watched the film. What I've said all the time, I love his feet. Matt, you don't see very many men this big. He has little wide receiver feet at 6'5", 205 pounds. And he is, when he gets rolling in the open field, he's awesome. And I'm sure you've seen his, I love his hands. He just has, I mean, we talked about Roma Dunze through the draft process. T-Mac's right there, man. He's got some serious hands. And if you don't know, everyone, his quarterback, Noah Fafita, was his friend since middle school. They played football before high school, in high school, and college. So you talk about touchdowns. We know Fafita is going to get his best friend and playmaker, the football. Love T-Mac, everyone.
And love these top 24 rankings. Love the resources, the Dynasty Devi CFF rankings, summer scouting rankings, reports, articles, all of that available over at patreon.com/rookie big board. Make sure to head on over there, support the Rookie Big Board, and make sure to jump into the episode description, click on that link, and support us as we raise money along with the CFF Kings Classic for St. Jude's. Thanks for checking out our CFF wide receiver preview episode.